on the 8th, we had a very successful blackout pep rally as a kickoff to our homecoming weekend. All the students were very spirited and all the games and contests were very competitive, and we even recognized an outstanding homecoming court. Then on the 16th, 9 officers and 2 advisors of the Student Council attended Officer Shop, which is a leadership conference at the College of Holy Cross for us. And then on the 21st, we held our annual Community Apple Pie Social. So we opened the cafeteria to about 30 or 40 senior members of the town, and they joined us, Student Council, for some homemade apple crisp and ice cream and coffee for a few hours. We sold homemade pies and had a fun afternoon playing bingo as well.
On the 26th, we attended an Excellent CMAS conference at Duxbury High School. 32 of our council members traveled to Duxbury to take part in Around the World of Leadership. Proudly, our council gathered 4 boxes of care packaged goods to donate to the men and women serving in the Army, and it was for the charitable organization Care Packs. On October 30th, our school organized and hosted costumes and children, students, and staff, grades 6 through 12, wearing Halloween costumes and or donating money to Make-A-Wish, which is an organization that grants the wish of a child diagnosed with a life-threatening medical condition in the United States. On average, 38 minutes, we continued the charity fundraising last week with Penny Wars, where we were able to raise additional money. So Student Council is donating $600 to Make-A-Wish.
Some of our upcoming events, Student Councils and Best Buddies are forming Special Olympic bocce teams to travel to compete and have fun at Whitman Hanson High School on November 21st. In December 2nd, we'll be traveling to Silver Lake High School for the Councils and Best Buddy programs. The event encourages an inclusion revolution where our schools encourage all students to get involved in school and feel welcome.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the approval of minutes. We have the October 5th regular session minutes. I would like to hear or...
Oh, yeah. I'll make a motion to approve the October 5th, 2015 regular session minutes.
Do I have Excellent. I have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and the October 19th?
I'll make a motion to approve October 19, 2015 special session minutes.
And I'll second.
All those in favor? Or
Aye.
any questions, concerns? None?
Abstain.
None? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. All right. Communications.
Yes, I'd like to give you a personnel update. Our new hires is Joyce Macrina. We welcome her back to work with us as a Title I math para. Candy Miller-Mitchell, we welcome her back to as Title I literacy para. Deborah Rice is joining us as Title I literacy para. And we do have a resignation from Christine Camo, kindergarten teacher, and Mary Crovo, a literacy para. So we are fully staffed right now. In addition, I have to add just a discussion item to the agenda that was not previously expected because the commissioner just announced this on Friday at the Superintendent School Committee Conference in Hyannis, that tomorrow the Commissioner of Education is going to communicate to the superintendents what his recommendation will be to the Massachusetts Board of Education as far as the assessment that will be used in the spring, starting in March. We anticipate that he will give a couple of options, and then the school committee, as they did before, when they voted whether or not to give the MCAS paper and pencil or the PARC either paper and pencil or technology-based testing. So the Department of Education will then vote on this on November 19th. So I will be able to tell you what the commissioner recommends after tomorrow, but I won't be able to tell you until there'll be a press conference later in the afternoon on November 19th about which assessments we will be giving in the spring and which will be your choices. Then we will need to meet before December 1st because I have to report to the Department of Education what the school committee's decision is. In the meanwhile, we meet tomorrow as administrative leadership team, and we will discuss the pros and cons and weigh the options, and the administrative team will be giving the school committee a recommendation, but in the end, it's still your decision. So the sort of what was told to us at the conference is there continue with the paper and pencil MCAS test as we always have based on the Massachusetts frameworks of 2011. Continue with PARC for either 1 year or on forever, or to have a third type of test, which would probably be what's called a next generation MCAS test, which would take the MCAS assessment based on the frameworks of 2011 and make it an electronic responsive test. And the advantage of that is to get the results back to the district in a more timely fashion. So these seem to be the three options, but I'll know more tomorrow and on the 19th, but that's what was told to us by the associate commissioners. So my suggestion, based on my own calendar, but you may have other things, is we could either meet on Tuesday, November 24th at 7:30, because we have interviews with principals up until 7, and or on November 30th at the regular time, 7 p.m. And I don't anticipate that this meeting would be at the longest 45 minutes. So do you want to talk about what date might suit you, or do you want to email the chair? What's your pleasure?
I would prefer the Monday myself. I'd rather stay with the Monday.
But when I was going to say I'd rather do it earlier than later. Any tiebreakers?
What time were you thinking on the 24th?
7:30 on the 24th. 7 p.m. on, well, we could do it any time on November 30th, but I'm available at 7 and afterwards.
I'm not available on Tuesday, so I'd prefer Monday.
I think, yeah, Monday's better for me.
James, you get a few more on your side here for Monday.
Liz, do you know when the National Honor
Just a
Society
thought,
induction
not a
is?
side.
23rd,
Perfect. Then either one is fine with me.
yeah, yeah.
Liz, can I just ask a quick question about
Sure.
that? Is the idea of the new gen, is that also a finish first? Is that because that's the MCAS company, right? So are they in the process of sort of upgrading MCAS to
I think there
suit
would be a
that?
whole procurement process that many testing companies would be asked to take part in a bidding process. This is the way they did it eons ago when we did. So,
First started.
yeah, I don't think the state can award a contract of that level without a procurement process.
Okay.
But I'm not sure, so I will ask the question and get back to you.
Well, I guess, MCAS has come a long way from when it started.
Oh, yes.
And it's had that time to sort of work out some kinks and some bugs, and I think jumping into something new means another period of getting over those kinks and bugs and working everything out, so.
I'm sure we're looking at 2 to 3 years before we have a final product.
Something decided.
Yeah, and meanwhile, we would keep dancing with whatever we have now.
Thank you.
So does Monday, November 30th at 7 p.m. work?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
I'm sorry, yes.
I'll come anyways.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry. Okay.
And I did give you a copy of the commissioner's update that he sent out to us at 6 on Friday, so, and I will copy you any of that ongoing communication, so that you can be well informed.
Excellent, thank you.
There's actually a great article in the Carver Reporter last Friday, and it's online. It's called Assessment and Pedagogy, and one of the Gateway Media editorials, and it was very interesting. I'll copy the link to you.
Great, thank you.
So you do have a copy of the October 1 enrollment for your review. And the one thing that we did discuss with the foundation budget review is that October, it's under tab number 6 in your packet. October 1 is not a very good month to actually measure the total enrollment of a school. For instance, if you look at our October 1 numbers for preschool, you see 45 children, and we ended the year last year with 64. Because children get to enter preschool, as special needs preschool students, when they're assessed at 2.9 to 3 years old, and so there's a rolling enrollment all year long, and the current students don't go away. So all year long, you add to the preschool enrollment, yet we only receive funding for the number that we have on October 1st. So one of the things we brought up with the Foundation budget review is that although the end of the year is the perfect time, but they didn't seem to think they could get all the voting done in the House and the Senate, et cetera. So, but they did agree that February 1st sounded like a more reasonable time to assess how many students are actually in our schools. So if you see this year's elementary school enrollment is 806 on October 1. It was 787 last year, so we're up by 19 students from year to year. The high school was 873 last year, and it's 856. It was down by 17, but overall we're up by 2 as a total district. So, but any one of these numbers are only good for one day, because we do have comings and goings. People are transferred, they move in and out of the district. So just to keep you up to date, but it was a pretty, I thought, productive discussion for when we should count the enrollment. That's something that they could change that would, in theory, not be a huge cost burden. You know, it's just the way, because the students are either here or in another district. So it would shift the cost, but it wouldn't necessarily cost more money. So we asked them to really seriously consider implementing this at an early date. And that's one thing that every district, I went to 5 out of the 6 hearings, and every district agreed that where they'd like it to be the end of the year enrollment, they would be very pleased to have it in February. So that's just sort of how that relates. Did you have any questions?
Is there a compromise?
It was a good compromise. I hope it's enacted, you know.
Yeah.
They did begin, they knew my name by the second one. They knew, okay, Liz, we know you're here, but go ahead. So, all right, so now I guess we start with the middle high school?
Sure, do you want to start here or here?
No, let's go ahead with this.
Scott's already up, so take it away, Scott.
Good evening again. So I'd like to give you an overview of our proposed budget for FY17 for the middle high school. I always start by talking a little bit about how our budget is developed. Department chairs build the budget for the individual line items. They seek input from teachers within their department. So it really starts at the teacher level. So teachers are able to give input in terms of how they'd like to see the supplies spent, what texts might be needed, what are their needs in the classroom. This year we changed it a little bit, and we developed a 5-year plan. So the department chairs, in conjunction with the teachers and the administration, developed a 5-year plan, which we'll see at the end, in terms of projecting out really what are the needs within each department. So each department said, what do we see as our needs over the next 5 years? So the beginning of the presentation is going to be an overview of the proposed budget for FY17. Then we'll look at what's the projection out over the next 5 years of departmentally where our needs are. The entire budget is approved by myself. And the budget and the 5-year plan was reviewed by the school council, so they saw both of those documents, and the completed budget is also reviewed by central office. Really, the key figure on this slide is the bottom line. So the proposed FY17 budget matches the proposed FY16 budget of $212,963. In past presentations that I've made to the school committee over the years in terms of our building-based budget, in this piece we talked a little bit about really that there's been a decline in spending power at the middle high school level, and really, I think, at the elementary school level in terms of what we can and are able to purchase based upon where our budget once was. The comparative figure was the combined budget of the middle and high school before 10 years ago was over $300,000. So you have a budget that was over $300,000 that's now $212,000. And that's, not taking into account inflation. So the spending power has been diminished. And really, when we level fund each year, what we were really saying is that our spending power is being diminished. So the 212,963 has been our level funded budget proposal for many years, over at least the past 5. I didn't go back and research where that number first came from, but it's been a pretty consistent level funded budget. So within that budget, there are certain cost centers. Within each individual cost center, there's been a little bit of change. But that's really based upon individual discretion of departments because they have a lot of control of their individual line items. And also some costs just going up like dues and memberships. So our main building blocks in terms of the budget are main office supplies and expenses, instructional supplies, textbooks, dues and memberships. So we've had a little shifting within those building blocks for the proposed budget for next year versus this year's budget. But again, the bottom line remains the same of the 212,963. So looking at each building block area, each area specifically. Main office supplies and expenses. A little bit of a decrease. Where that money goes to is professional development, postage and printing, just general office supplies, graduation supplies, supplies for the nurse, all of our contracted services within the building, which includes our planetarium, the language lab, our copiers. So obviously we have individual contracts with each of those groups that maintain those places and those spaces within the building. We've taken a little bit out of the office supplies and the postage and printing budget. The reality is we're doing a lot more electronic communication. We're doing less mailings. There's still places where we do whole group mailings out to everybody, but we've reduced that a little bit. And really, so our decrease in that cost area really comes from a decrease in office supplies and postage and printing. Instructional supplies. And the key number here really is the first bullet. So we've increased our instructional supplies a little bit to $110,000 for the entire building. But that really covers every area. It's all technology purchases, all copy paper, all classroom supplies, music, literature. It's everything. And really that number comes out to about $130 per student. So for the year at the building-based level, we have about $130 to spend per individual student on all of these types of supplies. And that's a pretty wide-ranging list. So what you really see there is when we look at that capital plan where our shortages may be is in technology. So a lot of the items you're going to see on the 5-year plan are technology items. They are textbook items. They are literature type of items because ultimately the money within the instructional supply line item isn't going to be enough for large-scale technology changes or a large-scale infusion of technology into the building. Now, we know the town has been very supportive of the school district over the last, I believe, Liz, you can correct me, it's 3 years. Last 3 years, there's been a $100,000 town warrant item, which has gone directly to technology, which has really, it has been very effective in improving the technology situation within the middle high school. We've gone to a full wireless setup. This year we have new desktop units throughout the building. So there has been improvements there, but those can't always be supported through our base $212,000 budget. Our next cost center is our textbooks. Most of this money does not go to purchasing new textbook series. The majority of this money would go to replacement of textbooks that we're currently using, rebinding of books. We do have some consumables, for example, everyday math journals. We do have online textbook accounts that we renew through this line item. All of our printed music. We have the library has a whole set of subscriptions So we have online magazine subscriptions, online accounts. And as I always like to say, there is one group that still buys a lot of books, and that is the English department. So we do occasionally replace a series of novels. So the English department's done really good at, most of the novels that we use for our core novels in all of our English classes in grades 7 through 12 are paperback versions. So they just go through a process in which they replace the paperbacks every several years to keep those up to date, because, students are really using those. The paperbacks just they wear a little differently than the hardback books. And our last cost center is dues and memberships. These memberships have gone up significantly, and the interesting part is that you see the number here went up only a few $100s. But what's happened is a lot of our departments, the English department, the maths department, the science department, they used to have dues and membership line items, and they used to have professional journals that they would subscribe to, or professional affiliations that they would pay for their staff. In essence, because the instructional supply line item has become, the spending power is less, they've been moving money out of their dues and membership individual line item accounts into instructional supplies. And departmentally, if I don't have the breakdown by each department, but if we had the breakdown for each department, you'd actually see that they're spending a lot less on dues and memberships. But the line up here has gone up because our big picture memberships have gone up. Every year, the MIA increased the cost that it gets raised every year. The NEAS membership gets raised every year. The Math Club, National Geography Bee, musical festivals, all those types of things, their cost goes up. So the line item here has only gone up a little bit, but it's really, we're actually paying a lot less dues and memberships, because departmentally, we're not joining up with professional organizations. We're not supporting teachers in terms of joining professional organizations and some of the research and literature and magazines and things that go with those memberships. So they've just made that decision of, we need to put our money into instructional supplies. It's more important that we're purchasing supplies for students than professional memberships. Obviously, individual teachers could purchase individual teachers could purchase their own professional memberships. They have every right to do that. But some of that used to happen through the building-based budget. Barry.
I just don't want you to forget about me. So my question is, even though
I would not forget about you.
We're losing it. So what's the negative? I mean, a lot of stuff goes without saying, but what is the negative impact of not having all those smaller memberships that the teachers are sacrificing?
I think ultimately the individual memberships to organizations, generally they provide some sort of a periodical or current research, so that the teacher would get a magazine or a regular journal article, kind of what's current in their field. And then a lot of those organizations, like the National Council of the Social Studies, they run events, they run trainings, they run professional development. Now, you can still go, but there's a member price and a non-member price. So a lot of those events all still occur, and our teachers still attend them. And some of those we pay for out of our professional development line item, and the district has supported some teachers going to the National Social Studies was here last year in Boston. So the National Council of Social Studies actually met in Boston last year. Obviously, that doesn't happen every year. They move throughout the country. So we sent several of our social studies teachers, because that was that opportunity was here for them to be local, and that was supported through the district-wide professional development budget. But those types of memberships, you could attend those trainings at a lesser cost if you were a member. So it's really attending trainings and the professional journals.
So my point is, though, how does that impact the day-to-day?
How it impacts it? Well, ultimately, all of those things impact the teacher's ability to be as current as possible in terms of their content knowledge, their pedagogy, their approach to teaching their subject matter. Now, that can be achieved in a lot of ways. I don't want to portray it as that not being members of these groups, now our teachers aren't able to do those things. But you're eliminating one way in which teachers are able to do those things by not being members of those types of professional groups.
I think the main thing is teachers absorb their costs because they want to be current, and the teachers pay for their own.
Yeah.
I think that's a real
Stop
significant,
pressing it. I thought I pressed the button.
reality is that the teachers, they want to be a part of these organizations because it is up-to-date, current information, and they just go ahead and pay for it.
Another reason to be teachers.
So going to the 5-year plan, maybe not. Maybe I should have checked make sure I was moving. So as I said, that it's developed by the department chairs, 5 years of needs, and it reflects items that are difficult to purpose out of the general budget. So when you look at that 5-year plan, and I'm not going to go through the entire plan unless you want me to. It's in the packet by department. They kind of lay out each individual department area where they see they would want to add some things. And really what they're projecting is what they're going to need. So like I'll take a specific one in mathematics. So in mathematics last year, we purchased a new textbook series for the 8th grade called the Big Ideas. And that textbook series is aligned to the Common Core standards and the shifts in mathematics. It was researched by the teachers. They had training on the series. They really like it. They think it's going to be a good connection. So they want to purchase the 7th grade textbooks. So on year 1 of the 5-year plan would be to integrate that 7th grade series, as an example, to try to have some continuity, because the Big Ideas program is really a middle school program. It's based for grades 6 through 8. We'd have to have a larger discussion because right now our everyday math program is K-6. So if we were going to go to Big Ideas, that would be a larger discussion if we wanted to go to the 6th grade level there, because we want to make sure that we complete our everyday math series, which is in the elementary school. But definitely for 7th and 8th grade, we'd really like to go to the Big Ideas. And we could look at that for each individual department. You'll also notice there's just a lot of technology purchases. One issue we've been running into this year is that our smart boards in the building, so all of our math teachers got some sort of interactive whiteboard probably about 10 years ago. But those boards are getting old, and several of those boards have been failing. So we've had concerns about, we've been swapping some boards out. We've been moving some boards around. We've had a look at purchasing some boards. So we're even looking at, and that's a fairly large expense in terms of purchasing those interactive whiteboards. They can run $1,000 to $1,500 a board. An individual department couldn't, if there's two boards that failed within their department, or they were concerned about them. Because what happens is the boards start to lose their calibration, so that where you touch isn't exactly where it shows up on the board. But if specifically in math, it's our math teachers who use that the most. That's a huge issue if you're touching the board and it's not showing up on the board where you're touching or where you're interacting in terms of the range of programs that they run in. And our high school math teachers use a series called the Notebook program, and I don't know if they use as much. Tammy have used as much in 6th grade, and that's tied right into the smart board. And again, if it's not calibrated, if it's not right, and if it's struggling, it becomes an instructional issue. So we're looking at replacement of smart boards. So we're replacing some technology that's in the building, and then looking to bring some new technology in. So really, when you look at this plan, the items that you see are technology items and still textbook items. And we might have to still have that large discussion of, and I think Liz is going to talk a little bit about the Technology Vision Committee tonight. I think that's on the agenda. And we do have a Technology Vision Committee for both the elementary level and the high school level, middle high school level, in terms of looking at where do we see technology going. Because there's always that conversation of, if we go to some sort of one-to-one model, do we need to have the textbooks? Are they going to have access to that in the one-to-one model? But either way, that's going to, no matter how that happens, that's going to be an expense that isn't supported by the 212,963 within the school-based budget, and obviously we're going to need to start looking at some of those things. So I guess I'll take any questions that you have.
Scott, I had a question. I noticed under the music, they have a music teacher in 2021.
Yes. So the goal would be to grow the music program. So I think that's the only individual teacher request we have in here. And that was a little bit of a discussion of where are we in terms of increasing staff. At this time, for next year, looking at next year, the only specific area we may be looking to increase staff might be within technology. We have a 0.5 technology teacher that I'd love to see become a full-time technology teacher. But otherwise, staffing-wise at the middle high school, based on our current enrollment, we have the staff to meet our needs. I think long-term, the music program wants to promote the music program and go back to 3 music teachers at the middle high school. We had 3 music teachers, and having 3 music teachers allowed us to have general music for all students in grades 6, 7, and 8. We no longer have 3 music teachers, so we no longer have general music in grades 6, 7, and 8. I think the music department would like to see that happen, but they also realize that that may not be something that realistically is going to occur in the next year or two. So I think that's why they've put it out as a 5-year goal, is to return to that staffing level and to be able to offer that. Because that was a programmatic cut when we went from 3 music teachers to 2 music teachers. What the fallout of that was the elimination of general music. And I don't remember the exact year of the music task force.
It was
I'm not saying you're going to know it specifically,
2007.
but it was about 7 years ago, 8 years ago. District-wide, we had a music task force to say how are we approaching music in the building. And one of the recommendations of that group was to have general music for all students in grades 6, 7, and 8. And eventually, we were able to fund that, and that came to fruition. And we did have a music program that had both chorus and band at the middle high school, and general music for all students. Cutting that teacher eliminated that, and the music department would like to see that return.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Scott, I'm imagining that when we look out like 4 or 5 years and some of these technology, like the smart podiums and the document cameras and stuff like that, that's all stuff that, let's say it does change. You can just allocate the dollars towards whatever the thing is.
I would think so. I think once you really start looking out 5 years, because we're not exactly sure what the technology would be. So right now, I think there might be some level of discussion about purchasing Chromebooks. 5 years ago, I don't think if we made a 5-year plan, no one would have had a Chromebook on their 5-year plan. Because the reality was the technology wasn't there. So I do think that somewhat in doing this 5-year plan, as I talked about with the department chairs, they were thinking incrementally in some ways of saying, well, we'd love to have all of our, we'd love to have every English classroom have a document camera, which isn't currently the case. And when you invest in things like technology, you want to think about investing that technology in the sense of the concept of all students who have access to that curriculum having access to the same technology. So, so that everybody who's in physics should be in a classroom with if one physics teacher has a smart board, the other physics teacher should have a smart board. It shouldn't be that if I have teacher A, I have access to this technology, but if I have teacher B, I don't, because they don't have the technology in there. And so I think the English department was thinking, I know I'm just looking at their document cameras and smart podiums, in terms of technology, saying, we'd love to see the access of having every English teacher have a document camera, but maybe we're not there yet, but we'll see if we buy 1 or 2 a year, we can make sure the same teachers teaching the same content area have access to the same technology. And then with the realization of, 4 to 5 years from now, we don't know exactly what that technology is going to look like, but the concept being we're always going to have to be updating and changing with the times and investing in it.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
The elementary team?
We should have told you.
That's what I'm here for.
Okay, so good evening. I'm Ruby Maestas, and I am going to present the elementary school budget. And I wanted to start similarly. Get coordinated here.
Do you want me to do it for you, Ruby?
Sure. For some reason.
It's hard to do it
Okay.
behind your back.
Yeah. There you go. So similarly to what Scott presented, I will sort of outline just the overview of how the budget process works at the elementary school. So as you all know, we have lead teachers at every grade level, K through 5. So the budget process starts there with our lead teachers working very closely with one another. For example, all the kindergarten teachers working with their K lead teacher to gather information and to share with one another of their grade level needs. But I wanted just to back up just a little bit and just let you know that we are presenting a level service budget, which is pretty much what we do every year. So that's where the teachers start. The next step is the lead teachers meet with the literacy director, Mrs. Taylor, and with the math coach, Mrs. Kelly, and they discuss their grade level curriculum needs as well. At the same time, special education teachers are working with me as well as with Mrs. Teichert in terms of the special education budget needs at their grade level. And allied arts teachers and the nurses are working closely with me in terms of the things that they need. And so the process, for this past year, it started pretty early on in September, discussing what our needs were, and there was a lot of dialogue going back and forth in terms of what it is that we need, and just focusing on a level service budget, maintaining what we have. So the entire budget is reviewed by me and approved, and then it is sent over to central office. We also have our school council in place, and they work with me, and they hear me every month talking about the budget and what it is, how the process works, and it's a great team of folks working with me trying to understand the budget. And so they have some input. They have a good knowledge base in terms of the budget. Can you hear me back there? Okay. So we have our 4 building blocks. I've talked to you about these building blocks in previous years, and so we'll go over those again. They are the textbooks, and what I've made just one slight addition here. I'm calling that textbook line item curriculum consumable text. All right, and so if you'll go ahead and go to the next slide, Scott, keep going, and the next one. All right, so these are our 4 building blocks. So instructional supplies, main office supplies, dues memberships, and as I mentioned, the curriculum consumable text. So if you look at this slide, I shared with you our FY 2016 budget, and then our proposed 2017 budget. And in the next slide, I'll go a little bit more into detail in terms of the curriculum consumable text. So what we are looking at in that $79,000 line item. So as you know, we are using Reading Street as our reading curriculum. We also have been using the Empowering Writers as part of our writing curriculum. We also are working closely with Keys to Literacy, so we're using those materials and consumables in terms of the Keys to Literacy. And we also are working very closely with our handwriting program. We use the Danielian. So when you look at the literacy curriculum materials for reading and writing, these are all really consumables, workbooks, materials that we use, and they go home with students and they don't necessarily come back. The same with math. We are using our everyday math program. Everything in this line item here is related to math, ELA, and online textbook accounts, such as Time for Kids and Let's Find Out. We've been using these materials for the last several years, and so this year our teachers worked very closely with our literacy director and math coach again, just to ensure that we have all of the materials that we're going to need for next year. The next line item is instructional supplies. So our proposed budget here is $78,273. So here's where, again, these are classroom materials. All of our copy paper, for example, we're talking about things like composition books, writing practice paper, student agendas, sentence strips, pocket folders for students, all of our copy paper. And I've also talked to you in the past about our literacy program. We do send weekly decodable readers with our children. So we do a lot of copying. So as a result, that is a little bit of an expenditure. All academic classroom supplies, as I mentioned, all art, music, phys ed equipment, supplies, and consumables. So we're talking about, sometimes we're updating phys ed equipment, balls, nets, scooter boards, equipment for the students to work with in phys ed, pennies, that sort of thing. Library media supplies and book purchases, what we're looking at here, we're sometimes replacing books. Scott had mentioned earlier, paperback books. Those wear and tear quite sooner than the hardback books, so some of these things are updating. Textbooks. Magazine renewals also falls under this area. Things like Boys Life, American Girl, Kids Discover, Zoo Books, Ranger Rick, that type of instructional supply. Other assessment materials, so our school psychologist, here's where we will use funds from this line item for these expenses. All right, so that's the bulk of our budget at the elementary. The next line item is our main office supply. This is $17,888. Here we're talking about postage and printing. It's $2,000, and we are still sending out a lot of mailings, especially at the beginning of the year or the summertime. Parents will receive their letter in the mail, kindergarten registration packet, that sort of thing. Office supplies, we have $1,500 that we are proposing for both offices. Contracted services, these are our copy machines. Scott talked a lot about that earlier. We have several copy machines, so there's contracts at the elementary that total $8,200. Professional development, so this is really in terms of professional development for staff. So these are registration fees for seminars, workshops that they attend, as well as admin, so staff and administration. And then health office supplies also falls in this category, and this is approximately $2,000 for health office supplies for 2 health offices. And then the last building block, if you will, is renewal fees, and these are for the administrators at the elementary school, and this has been the fee for the last couple of years. I anticipate that it will go up eventually, but for now, it's the $2,557, and this is for membership to Massachusetts Elementary School Principals Association, the National Elementary School Association, and NIAC, and that's for kindergarten. And we typically pay a $700 annual fee to be for our renewal. All right, so the next slide that I wanted you to take a look at, I like to present this slide just in terms of what it looks like per student expenditure. And what I've included here are the curriculum consumable text and the instructional supplies, are 2 big bulk sort of expenditures. So when you look at the curriculum consumable texts, it's $88.13 per student. And the instructional supplies, $86.68 per student. So you combined $174.81 per student at the elementary. And so then the next slide was just a cost center. I'm actually wondering why I put that slide on. I don't like it as much as the previous one. All right, and the next one, the last one. So this is our enrollment projection for FY17. So I know Liz talked a little bit about our enrollment earlier, and basically what she said is it's fluid, it's always changing. So these numbers are the numbers that I had when I put the presentation together, which was about 2 weeks ago, about a week and a half ago, actually. And so, yes, that number absolutely is constantly changing. FY 2016, we finished off with the 840. The projected, sorry, that's where we're at right now, 840. And then the FY 2017 projected budget, we're looking at 903 students. And what we do, when I'm sharing, so when we're getting our budget process started, I need to give our lead teachers enrollment numbers to work with. So what we typically do is we add 10, because we need to make sure that we have enough materials at every grade level for 10 more students. So that's what I've done here. So the projection for next year would be 903 students, and that's our proposed budget at the elementary.
Ruby, I'd just like to add that the preschool numbers have been increasing at a continued rate. Every year we experience more. So we do think that we had an unusual large amount enrolling kindergarten this year, and I do think we'll have another large enrollment for the next 2 years based on our preschool numbers, which end up to be just over 50% of the total population. So, you know, this is the best estimate that we give at this time, but that's how we arrived at the numbers.
I guess I have some concern in that number that we're putting out there as an estimated number. When you look at October 1st, 2015, we had 806 is what we had listed here. And now we're going a month later with 840, which is a pretty big increase. And then we're looking at a projected next year 903. It seems like an awful high projection when we're trying to build a new elementary school for a different number, and I think putting that number out there may be confusing to a lot of people.
The big difference is in the preschool number, because we know now that we're going to have in February 1st, we're going to have that many children in preschool.
But there's only 3. This goes from 69 to 72. That's only an increase of 3 students.
But if you look here, it goes from 45
to 69.
to 69.
Right.
That's the main difference with the 840. These are all actual numbers. They match up to this one.
Right.
Okay, so the main difference in 840 is in the preschool. You see what I'm saying? And we know those kids are coming in because we've already screened them.
I do, and I understand what you're saying with the estimation of that number, but that's a number that's going to go out there to the public where we're not building a school for 903 people. And I think you're going to put a number out there that's going to be confusing to a lot of people that are going to vote for a school that are going to say, well, why are you building a school if it's too small, if we're going to have 903 students?
One of the things that I need to do when I'm presenting this information to the teachers is I look back at our history, and if you recall, a couple years ago, we had that second grade who had an enrollment increase of 13 students in August. So I need to ensure that we have enough supplies for all of those children. I know prior to that, there was a year where we had 160 students. So those are now they're in 7th grade. So I understand what you're saying in terms of the numbers, but what I need the teachers to do is I need to ensure that if we have an increase in August, which does happen, that we have supplies for all of the students. I can't have teachers starting without enough textbooks for all of those students. And that's been a sort of a safe bet for us.
And I agree with you, Ruby. I agree with you 100%. I'm just saying that, you know, you being part of that committee might be helpful, because if these numbers are out there, that we could be facing questions about that, because what you're doing is estimating higher to be prepared with supplies. But that number can be taken out of context in a lot of different ways, and I think we're getting to a pretty critical part with the school, which we'll talk about later on. And I just want to make sure that we're clear in our explanation of why those numbers are where they are, because somebody may take that number and say, you know, if that's your projection, how are we planning on meeting that with the school that we're trying to build? But what you're saying is that it's an overestimate in order to make sure that it's more of a materials number than anything else.
That's what it is.
That and some students, believe it or not, lose things. And we have to replace them, you know, so to budget for 10 extra students per grade level is smart, because kids lose them, they leave them out in the rain, whatever, and then we have to replace them. So that's another one.
Right. The other thing is every now and then we'll have a situation or a scenario in, with students that we may need to have an additional set of materials to be sent home for the school year. And that probably happens on average once or twice. Let me back up. For about 2 students in each grade level where they need that in order for them to be able to access the curriculum when they return to school the next day. So,
Barry?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, Mrs. Maestas. When Mr. Neef mentioned the middle high school budget, and he compared last year's 212 to this year's 212, I thought, wow. And you spoke to the fact, Mr. Neef, that, you know, the inflation has eaten into that. So even though it's level, it's real, the purchasing power has gone down. So when Mr. Neef was presenting that, I thought, holy cow, we're going to survive with a 0 increase. And then I hear your wonderful presentation, and that slide that you brought up showed it's going down $14,000. So even though you're doing level services,
yes.
the cost is going down.
Yes, and that's partially because of the Reading Street curriculum that we purchased last year. So, so last year, that included more textbooks. This next year, the proposed budget is, we don't need textbooks. Now what we need are the consumables.
Okay, excellent. So that seems to cost, well, that line item's going up, the consumables.
That consumable line item is going up slightly. Yes.
Yeah, so the consumables going down, instructional supplies is going up.
So, yeah, but I'll share with you the instructional supplies, part of the reason that is going up, so last year, as you are all aware, we didn't have an instructional media specialist, all right? Now that we have someone in that position, she's been able to catch up with some of the things that with informing me on some of the things that we need, and ensuring that they're in place for the following year. So that's that slight increase under instructional supplies. And yes, and Mrs. Taylor can speak to the texts and the consumables.
I was just gonna say, because we did the bulk purchase of things like, I was gonna just try to say it from here.
You got to tell everybody.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I was just going to say that because we did the bulk purchase of the actual textbooks, manuals, and guides and things like that, all we'll need to replenish are just, like Mrs. Mayes just said, just the consumables. But the other thing we did is we prioritized purchasing the core literacy program versus things like additional materials and teacher supplies for the handwriting program that she was talking about earlier. So the teachers have been sharing one manual for all of the teachers at every grade level, which is really difficult. So they really do need their own manuals at every grade level to run the handwriting program and other consumable items for the writing program and for our supplemental programs like Keys to Literacy. Again, teachers are sharing with some of our new staff. We weren't able to get them the materials that they needed, so they're sharing. They're making copies, they're sharing. And they do a wonderful job with that, but obviously they need their own, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's remarkable that it went down 14,674. Very good. Thank you.
Paula, Andrew, any questions? No?
Yeah, quick one.
Sure.
Ruthie. On looking at the supplies, so between the two schools, you get close to about $200,000. At the end of the day, how are the purchases allocated? Basically, what I'm saying, are we currently at a stage where we're using bulk purchases for as much as we can? But I know obviously in the elementary school you're limited in storage. So are you currently doing more allocation on need? When you're purchasing paper and other items, are you able to buy in bulk? We can save some money that way, or are we currently not there? that we can't?
No, we do. We absolutely buy in bulk. We order we're looking at ordering in July, early July, and we do have, the storage center is actually between the EKW and the GJC building. That storage building there is filled with materials because we absolutely will get more for our money if we buy in bulk. Our student agendas, we buy agendas for all of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and we definitely get a much better cost ordering in bulk.
We buy all the paper all in one, for the whole district, on one bid. But then we get it delivered in 2 separate components. So we do save a lot of money with the big bulk purchase, which we try to do every year in July or August. So, but we can separate the deliveries so we can store it.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank Mr. Neef and Mrs. Maestas. I know the past few years financially have been excruciating, but I do appreciate you being financially responsible and very savvy with the funds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Malinowski, welcome. Would you like to do your presentation at this time? I mean, we can put you at the end as well, but...
Good evening, members of the school committee, and thank you for having me on the agenda tonight. And I also want to thank Alan Dunham for calling me tonight to let me know that I was on the agenda, because I didn't realize that you had put me on there. You have me on the agenda for the town administrator's budget. That budget was accepted by the selectmen back in the beginning of October, which is why we had hoped to meet with the school committee in September and October to go over what the proposed budget is. But what I could do is I could go over the budget that the Board of Selectmen approved and answer any questions you have on that. Let me pass down some copies. So as everyone's aware, 2 years ago, we had a committee that included the superintendent, the business manager, the town administrator, the town accountant, member of the school committee, member of the Board of Selectmen, member of the capital outlay, and member of the finance committee, get together and put together, meet and put together financial policies for the town. There was some debate over that over a couple meetings, and then finally they were approved by the committee. Those financial policies were then sent to the Board of Selectmen, who adopted them, and then in 2014, town meeting adopted the town's of Carver's financial management policies. So with that, that's how our entire budget has been put together for the last 2 years, and this is the 3rd year that it'll be going through the same format. Tied into that format, during September and October, or actually September with completing in October, is the town administrator works on putting together a forecast with the Board of Selectmen for what the expected revenues are going to be for the town for the following fiscal year, so that we can then go forward and allocate the funding the town has available to maintain and to support the services the town has. With that, there are a couple key guiding principles tied into this. One is that the town has made a priority for its capital stabilization fund to put money into there up to 10% of our operating revenue to maintain our buildings and our equipment and our basically our roads infrastructure and all necessary equipment. With that, we buy school buses, we buy technology. Last year, we bought we bought textbooks. Last year, I also requested town meeting to fund the MSBA allocation for doing a new roof and a new heating system with the middle high school, and that was all funded out of the capital stabilization fund. And again, that is done without any additional debt exclusion to the town. So that program is working very well and is something that we're very proud of. The second is we are in the process, as we all know, and it's on your agenda tonight, of building a new school. And with building a new school, we've had to demonstrate financial accountability to the town and also put together our plan and forecast so that we can be able to afford the services that we need going forward. With that, that also means that we're going to be borrowing $30+ million, if not more, between the school and other improvements that we're going to have to do in town. Now, right now, when I came into the town had about, I think it was $4 million of debt, not including the North Carver Water District. So in comparison, you know, you're under a handful of millions of dollars in existing debt, and now you're going to go out and borrow $30 to $40 million. That's something Carver hasn't done in a while, but that's because we have to build all these new infrastructure components or upgrade things that were long overdue. In doing so, what we're also trying to do is trying to improve our bond rating so that we can get lower interest rates when we go out to borrow and therefore reduce our cost of borrowing. And a key component with that is our financial management policies, plus building up our stabilization fund, which is also put in about 5% of our revenue. And that was completed last year at the annual town meeting. Now, 5% is only a few weeks of operating revenue for the town, should something catastrophic happen. But it is something to show that we've started that practice. We've also made some significant strides in improving our other post-employment benefits liability. And if you look on the bottom of this chart, and I think this is a lot of kudos to the selectmen and others for putting this together, if you look at the two bottom lines in red, the middle one, or the second one, shows that our OPEB unfunded actuarial liability as of 7/1/12, which was the OPEB report that I inherited, for FY16 would have been $51.999 million. Through some of the structural changes, again, the Board of Selectmen have done, that new number with our new report that just came out in January is now $41 million. In essence, we've reduced down our long-term liability by $10 million in FY16 this current year. Next year, it goes down by $12 million. And you can see by making strategic changes, you can reduce the town's long-term liability by making smart financial decisions, which is what the town has done. The last piece has to, as this budget is put together, is, in the forecast, is we follow the Department of Revenue policies where we try to maintain their recommended 3 to 5% of revenue coming in at free cash every year. That's sound financial management practices, that's a DOR guideline, that's what our budget is built upon. I'm happy to say last year we met that target, and this year we're going to meet that target too. Now, getting into the piece of paper in front of you, this is our 10-year forecast going out. We haven't done the recap for FY16. Those are being done as we speak, and those will be updated for FY16. But these were, in essence, the budget numbers that were approved and the revenue that was approved in FY16. For many of these items, they're pretty fixed as to what our future cost is going to be. So what you're going to see here is the page is broken down into 3 sections. I'm going to start at the top section, and the middle section is the fattest, and then the bottom section. So the top section, the property tax levy revenue, this is revenue. So the top third is all the revenue coming into the town for any of these FY years. So the first column is the prior year taxes raised. So you can see that $21.8 million is just a carryover from the previous year. Then on top of that, there's a 2.5% increase for new growth. Many people ask, well, why do my taxes go up 2.7 or 2.8%? Well, the reality is your taxes go up the 2.5% plus new growth, and that always averages around 2.7, 2.8. So when you hear people asking that question, it's 2.5 over last year plus new growth. The next item is that, based upon some of the forecasts that our assessor's coming in with, is she's expecting a little bit more new growth this year in personal real estate. I'm sorry, in real estate. Real estate goes right into the base, and that's what's divided up amongst the departments. Also, our personal property for new growth was slated to go down a little bit this year compared to last year, but this was prior to doing 2 new solar projects that were done after this was approved. So we're looking at a total about $22.6 million in tax levy revenue. That's money paid by the residents of Carver. Now, due to the economic realities of Carver, we are heavily subsidized by the state. We receive over a third of our revenue, or almost a third of our or about a third of our revenue coming in from state aid and cherry sheets. That's $11.8 million is what our forecast is for next year. As you may recall, this past year we lost. The town of Carver received less state aid, less net state aid than we did the year before. We did receive some significant increase in the general government revenue, and also a modest increase in Chapter 70. However, we were severely penalized by some of the charter school sending tuitions, which comes out of that net money that we receive from the state. Then we have our local receipts that come in from building inspections, plumbing and electrical inspections, Board of Health fees. These can also be the beach stickers. So that comes in at $2.3 million. And this is the first year we're going to fully receive our meals tax, and we're estimating that to be $84,000. As you may recall, town meeting approved that in 2014. And, you know, technically, a lot of this meals tax is from visitors coming into Carver that visit Eaterville and also King Richard's Fair. So again, this is the first year we're going to receive that full amount. So we're looking at a total of $36.9 million in revenue for the town. From there, then we get into the deficit side of our budget, which is fixed liabilities, transfers to other funds, and then townwide share details, budget details. We are looking at between cherry sheet assessments, overlay account, and Southeast Regional Assessment, we're looking at $1.125 million in fees coming out. Where you see the big differences in the cherry sheet assessment for charter school tuition, again, that went up from $320 to $519 is what happened last year. So that was a big hit to the town as a whole. Then we get into other funds. The transfer to the capital stabilization minus the DIF, because some of the money that's in the DIF in the North Carver Water District is there to support the North Carver Water District. So these, so the first line item is money going into the capital stabilization that then gets divided up around the town. Transfer to the North Carver Water District. Then we have $25,000 going to our general stabilization. $25,000 going to compensated absentee liability fund as recommended by our auditors, and $145,000 going to our OPED trust fund. So those are our transfers to other funds. And then in the last section, we have town meeting articles, as you see, consistently of $75,000. We have the reserve fund consistently of $125,000. We have the Old Colony Vote Tech. That also went up by almost $100,000 due to additional students that have chosen to go to the Old Colony Vote Tech. And when they go there, we have to pay for their full tuition. And their tuition is more expensive than what their per pupil cost is here in Carver. But again, that comes out of the townwide shared budget. Even though that's an education-related expense, it doesn't come out of your budget per se. Then we have snow and ice removal. There's a bunch of blanks in there because I know the selectmen are still working with the school committee on answering a few questions. But the snow and ice removal, that has moved up from $235,000. In essence, what you're going to see going forward is that our snow and ice is drastically under budget. As you know, we had a funding issue this year, as we do every year, but this year was significantly harder than most years. But not that we're ever going to fully fund the snow and ice, but we have to get more reasonable. We have to get more realistic. If we know that we're running $400,000 to $500,000 to $600,000 on average year over year, you can't budget $200,000. That's just not being fair or really honest with the taxpayer. So what you're seeing here is a bump of $25,000 plus 10% for 2017, and then 2018 on out, it just goes up by 10% annually. That gets us to the all-important number of, after we get rid of those fixed costs, that the available revenue is $31.6 million. That's what's available to the town to run its day-to-day operation of all its departments. So that's going to yield into a net change year over year of $522,000, which means that going into the departments, and this is a really important percentage here that everyone needs to pay attention to, new money going into the departments year over year is 1.65, and if you look out into future years, you're all around 1.5 to, it goes up to, well, it's pretty much 1.5 going out. That's the reality of Carver. Until we're able to get more business growth into the community, until we're able to get Route 44 developed, and other key aspects of the community, that is the reality of new revenue coming into the town. So in order to have a sustainable budget without a tax override, we have to develop budgets that encompass the 1.65% this year. And then finally, going back to our financial management policies, excuse me, based upon all new revenue coming into the town after these fixed costs, 70.3% goes to the school district, and excuse me, 29.7% remains in the general government to run all of the other departments. So with that, as voted by the selectmen, is that the money that they have available to fund the school is $22,267,318, and the money that's available to fund the town budgets is $9,407,387,000 based on our financial management policies. And again, this is what the selectmen adopted at their October meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions?
Can I just, may I ask you a question?
You may.
I love what you said about the new business growth and Route 44. Is there what type of long-term plan is there to do that? Sure. Sounds very interesting.
Actually, at our last selectmen's meeting, the Carver Redevelopment Authority has been working with myself, also our former planner, Jack Hunter, and now our new planner, with a developer to come in and put together, I'm going to use a word, but I'm going to come back and define the word, an urban renewal plan. You're like, urban renewal in Carver? Well, basically, it's an economic development tool that allows the town to sponsor a geographically designed master plan within a certain part of the community. And the Redevelopment Authority has designated north of Route 44 and west of 58, and then the two town boundaries behind that, so that rectangle piece up there, the old Wentworth property, and working with a developer to come in and actually have that pre-permitted, kind of like what happened with the Cisco property at our neighboring community, to go through all of our state MEPA, NEPA requirements, as well as local approvals and wetlands conservation approvals, and also helping the developer do some land assembly so that they can put in the needed infrastructure. There needs to be new roadways to go into accessing that property. I can't sit here and tell you that in year 2021 or 2025 we're going to see a hit. What I am here to say is that if we don't do anything, these numbers are tough, and that we all have to work together for a long-range plan. The Carver Redevelopment Authority has moved forward in voting to do this urban renewal plan, and that was updated at this last selectmen's meeting. From a development standpoint, that was designed in our townwide master plan for manufacturing, warehouse, those types of developments back on that land. I used the word urban because that's the technical term the state requires us to use because it's under Chapter 121B, an urban renewal plan. But really, anyone who's driven back there, it's open blighted land. And therefore, but they have to use the word urban. But it's blighted land. I think everybody knows that. It's open blighted land. But I just didn't want to scare anybody with the word urban. We're not developing a city. We're not doing anything like that. It's just the technical term under 121B.
That's what they did in the 60s in Plymouth on Summer Street down by the John Carver Inn. I guess there were hundreds and hundreds of homes and dilapidated homes, and they decided to do some urban renewal with the federal, state, and the local government.
Correct.
So it has a lot of good positive results. Obviously, it looks great down there.
And that's the town's priority for development area. And you've got, interstate access pretty much right off of that. We have the North Carver Water District, so we can supply water. You couldn't develop this without water, so now that we've got the water up, it's a natural sequence to move forward with. But again, I do not want to raise anybody's expectations that a large developer is going to be building a 3 million square foot facility next year, and all of a sudden it's going to be the answer to all our financial problems. It's not going to happen like that. And even when that happens, there's usually some type of a negotiation that happens with taxes anyway. But it'll provide jobs, it'll provide more water sales, and it will eventually provide more taxes at some point in the future.
Thanks.
Great, thank you.
I just had a quick question for Liz, actually. I've been looking at that charter school number, and do you have any feelings as to where that spike came from, and should we be planning ahead for, is that going to continue? Because it doesn't seem like we're really planning for another big spike. What's your feelings on it?
The charter school number is another moving target. It's whatever they have on October 1. We have one more student at the charter school than we did last year. So I don't have the same numbers in my calculation. But, I know that because we get the list. We know exactly who's there. What usually happens is the charter schools are well-known for weeding out people, and they cancel them out, and we get a lot of them back by mid-year. But the money is not the money isn't taken from here. It's sifted off from the state. It's revenue that doesn't come to us. It goes directly to the charter school. Okay? So it isn't sent to Carver and then we pay them. And it's sent quarterly. So if by February we have 19 students, we'll only be paying for 19 and not 24.
Okay.
So it shifts by enrollment. Or should it go up, then money is shifted over. But the money follows the child, whether they go to charter or choice, and we have choice students coming here as a revenue. This year, I believe we have $130,000 worth of choice students. That money comes to the schools. That's how we were able to fund another kindergarten teacher when we had the very large number come to kindergarten. So we do know now how many charter school students we have, but they do make predictions, but then predictions aren't always accurate.
Ask one more question?
Sure.
So I want to say thanks for coming tonight, Mr. Malinowski, because I understand you went to, you had a previous engagement at Waterview, talking about our potential new school building.
We did.
How did that go?
Mr. Ward and I went there. There were about 25, 30 community members. We presented for about 45 minutes. I will say that we had some tough questions, and they were appropriately responded to by some of the residents. I'll highlight three of them. One individual got up and said, well, in my younger years, I had gone forward and funded new schools and through taxes and everything, but I don't have any kids right now, so why should I get excited about this? And one of their board of directors members got up and says, well, that's because we have grandchildren in the school, and it's our responsibility to do that. So that went over pretty well, and I think the individual got that. Another question that was asked is, well, you're building a new fire station. We had to buy some new fire engines because the old ones were getting at their useful end of their life. We have to do an upgrade to the police station. What about the middle school new roof and everything? I said, well, we've got that all under control. I said, we have our capital stabilization plan. It has funded the new fire station. It will fund the upgrades to the police station. It is purchasing the school buses. It is purchasing the fire engines. It will pay for the town share of the new roof and also the boiler for the middle high school. None of those things are going to require any more debt exclusion. So when we come to you this time, this is going to be the number we're asking for. And they were very pleased with that. And then finally, someone brought up the fact that it was only $42 a month, which is less than $4 a week. And then when I compared that to the single-family householders, they were like, oh, we've got a good deal. Yeah, you do.
That's awesome.
So, positive feedback.
And then one of their members broke it down saying, gee, that's less than $4 a month.
Yeah. Pretty good.
Dunkin' Donuts stopped, they said. Not us, they said that.
Excellent. Thank you both for going.
Oh, I'm sorry, Barry.
All set, thanks.
Barry's all set.
Two things, Mike. One, you had mentioned that you're doing a recap for 2016 now. Could we get a copy of that when that's done? Would you mind?
That's part of our tax rate that we'll do that, absolutely.
Awesome. The other question is, and to me, this looks really good. It looks like you guys put a lot of time into trying to make a plan that's going to work for the town well. My question to you would be, coming from the school committee and the budget that we face and the issues that we face, the one thing that seems to be missing from this list, I know there are some unknowns and some estimation involved in there, but when we discuss our budget, when we look at our budget, one of the main things that we have to constantly address and deal with is the fact that we have so many unfunded mandates and expectations from the state. And that's what really hurts our budget and in being able to meet the expectations and the needs that we have. Is there anything within your town or from the town side of the budget that's compatible to that at all or comparable to that at all? Because I think I understand where we need to try and fit in to meet the expectations of the town, but in the same sense, we have a responsibility to meet the expectations of the state, and they make that very difficult for us, not funding what their expectation is.
I think there's two things that the school committee has the opportunity to do, and what school committees normally vote on, is that, in essence, you have two extra funds above and beyond all the numbers that I've mentioned here, that you receive directly from the state, that don't go through the town, that are there to deal with uncertainties or changes that happened. And that is your circuit breaker account and your school choice account. You just had the superintendent mention that out of the school choice account, they were able to hire a new kindergarten teacher last year. That's where the state actually gives you money back to deal with those unforeseen things. Does the town also have unfunded liabilities? We all do. The town has stormwater unfunded liabilities that at some point DEP is going to start finding towns that don't have all water separators on every catch basin throughout their entire community. Now, they're going to start a tiered system that'll go through dealing with some of the coastal communities before they get to us in the inland communities. But, I mean, that's a huge multi-million-dollar number potentially down the road if they implement it as currently proposed. I think that, there are other ones that we have to deal with too, and we just make them work. But we don't have those extra two funds like you guys have, so I think that's where the state has given a little bit more flexibility than they do give the town.
I don't want to have a debate tonight because we got a lot to cover, but I've never heard circuit breaker spoken about in a positive nature. I'm no expert, but I've been listening to this for 10 years, and it's always like, Karen Tyker could probably speak about it, but circuit breaker is not a whip-de-doo, I got my circuit breaker in today. Is that true, Karen?
Well, Barry, it's we're paid in arrears. It's 4 times the foundation budget. So if you spend, let's just say foundation budget is $12,000 per child. So if you spend over $48,000, then circuit breaker is funded at a percentage that you can if you spend 50. So the way we get circuit breaker is they take 50 minus 48 and give you a percent. It's been as low as 42%, and it's been as high as 95. So we don't get back this money, and we've already spent the money. It's spent in the previous year. That's how you get it. For instance, this year, we have more than 7 move-ins of students who need out-of-district placements. This, it's not funded in this year's circuit breaker. It'll be funded in next year's, but we don't know if it's going to be funded at 42% or 95%. So it's a very moving target. It's absolutely dedicated to one thing and one thing only in special education, so we have no flexibility with that money.
It also just means the more circuit breaker you're getting back, the more you spend.
Yeah.
And you're still not getting back the total amount you spent. So just because you're getting a big circuit breaker number back, just means that you actually had to spend more that year, and you're getting reimbursed.
A year and
Yep. And everything that's completely true. And again, the context that I put that into is we're looking at an FY17 budget. So the question was, how do we deal with unfunded mandates? You're getting money from last year into your FY17, in addition to your FY17 budget. So it's always money from arrears going into a future budget, that the expense has already been paid, so you don't have to have that expense anymore. It's money that can be used for new.
That's not exactly true, because the children who are in out-of-district placement just keep going back. I mean, they're still there. We're going to incur those expenses again next year.
Until they leave where they're...
Until they're 22 years old. Correct. So once you have reached a certain level, you're never going down unless Karen develops a new program, which she has done and brought children back. But circuit breaker is only for special education. We can't flex it into any other spending. And the school choice, we do spend on majority on kindergarten because that's where we have school choice. It's flexible in that we can pay teachers' salaries with it, but now that we have 7 in that kindergarten grade, the next year when they go to first grade, we'll also need that teacher to move to first grade or some other teacher. So those are dedicated funding sources. They're not really flexible, and they don't allow us to spend it on anything else. So if we have another great need, we can't just spend circuit breaker or school choice money on that.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. Okay, we're going to move on to the discussion of the Carver statistics expenditure comparison as to the other districts in the state.
Meredith, can I ask your help? So you have 2 handouts. One says the Carver historical per pupil expenditures, and one says the blue, the statistical analysis. Thank you, Tina. So,
This is the data that you give us in a different format, though?
right, so we've made it more user-friendly and did a 5-year comparison.
Okay.
So you had the raw data on this that I gave you to consider at the October 19th meeting. And every year we try to look at what our per pupil expenditures are for Carver as compared to the rest of the state. Go to the next slide. This is spending from all funds. It's from the town funds, from Chapter 70 funds, from federal grants, from state grants, from circuit breaker, from school choice, and other tuition revolving funds, athletic funds, school lunch funds, even what we collect for the renting our buildings, et cetera. So the state asks us to report in specific categories, which I'm going to go through one by one, and then they compare us to all of the 326 or 327 districts. Now we're going to look, Peter put together one that's a 5-year trend, and I'm going to go through the just past year, 2014. They're always a year behind, because these reports are not due into the Department of Education until the end of the federal fiscal year. So that's now. And so the 15 won't be available to, if we want it sometime in July or June, because it takes the state a while to process all this information. But the most important thing is it's every penny that comes into the school district compared. So for the 2000, ooh, I put the wrong date, 13-14, sorry about that. Carver spent, under administration, Carver spent $393 per student, and the Mass state average of the 327 districts was $500 per student. So we ranked 259 in spending on administration functions out of 327. And in instructional leadership, Carver spends $851 per pupil in 14. Mass average was $935. We ranked 187 out of 327 districts. Classroom and specialist teachers, $4,865 per pupil in Carver. Mass average was $5,441 per pupil. So we ranked 253 out of 327 districts. Other teaching services. Carver spends $958 per pupil, and the Mass average is $1,137, so we're 200 out of 327 districts. Professional developments. Carver spent $199 per pupil, and the Mass average was $217, and we ranked 105 out of 327. So we're more in the middle ground here, but that's because 3 of our grants that we receive, that's the only thing you can spend the money on. So most of the money in this line item comes from Title II, Title I, and some Makepeace grants. So we are able to spend more than the average for professional development. Instructional materials, equipment, and technology, the things that the principals were reporting on. Carver spends, on average, $238 per pupil, and the Mass average is $432. So we're 247 out of 327. Guidance, counseling, and testing, we spend $450, and the Mass average is $421 per pupil. We're 129 out of 327 districts. And this has been true about that amount the entire time I've worked here, because the year before I started to work here, when before Scott became principal, we had a graduation assistance program that just really didn't work, and we had a dropout rate of over 9%. So one of the first things Scott and I had to do was put together a plan with the, and also the special education director at the time, to address this need. And so it involved hiring additional school adjustment counselors, and we now have one for the middle school and one for the high school, and our dropout rate now is less than 1%. So does it work? Yes, it does. Next, please. Our pupil services, Carver spends $1,103 per pupil, and the Mass average is $1,376. So that puts us at 222 out of 327 districts. Operations and maintenance, we spend $935, and this average is $1,103. We're 244 out of 327. Payments to out-of-district schools, Carver spends $32,882 per pupil. Mass average is $21,839. This is something that's determined by the needs of the students. We, in essence, have very little choice. The parents, a team meeting that decides and what's the best for the student, and we want to do what's best for the student. It's a little odd that the state average is 21, because the least expensive out-of-district placements are collaboratives, and they cost $40,000 per student. So you kind of wonder on how you get to such a low amount, and we're under the collaborative average, but we're 120 out of 327.
Is it possible that's an old number?
No, it's for instance, there are several districts in the state that are elementary schools. They're K-6 districts, and they don't have any out-of-district placements, so their number 0 gets averaged in with all
With
of
the-
us, we were
okay.
pre-K-12. So
Thank you.
that's how that happens. So in total expenditures, if you look at everything we spend in Carver for 2014, we are $13,092 per pupil. The mass average is $14,518. We rank 228 out of 327. We're in the bottom third. Teachers' salaries are not included in the end of the year report, but I wanted to give you what it is for Carver. Our average salary for 14 was $65,110. Mass average was $73,847. We were 242 out of 327, but it's kind of frightening when you look at the next slide. In 2010, we ranked 145 for teacher salaries. In 2011, 180. 2012, 178. 2013, 207. In 2014, 242. So we are not competitive in hiring teachers. And I don't want to hear anything about we're paying our teachers too much, because we definitely aren't. So this was a pretty enlightening study, and then Peter put through this. Do you want to walk me through your pages?
Yeah,
Which is a 5-year trend analysis.
The 5-year trends are piggyback on what Liz just did, except they go back to fiscal year 2010, and they show the trends that where Carver compares to the rest of the state. And at the bottom of each of these sheets, you'll see that there's a ranking of where Carver was in that particular fiscal year compared to the rest of the state. The chart itself is a percentage, so you can see that in like the first one where it says total expenditures, that fiscal year 10, Carver was in 70% of more schools, theoretically, a little less than 70% had a higher total expenditure spending than Carver did. That's the way the charts themselves read. So once again, it mirrors what Liz just talked, except it's a 5-year analysis. And at the end of the analysis, the last 3 pages, I've included what the state looks at within those categories. So if you want to know what they look at in administration, what they consider instructional leadership, teachers, teaching services, this is what the state looks from the end of the year report to compile the charts that you see before you for the 5-year analysis for the complete school district. And once again, this is all public information. On the cover page, you can see where we picked that up from. If anybody wants to go out and verify the numbers or do a further analysis, I believe that the state analysis goes back to fiscal year 96, I believe, in some categories, but this is the last 5 years, including the most recent one, which, as Liz pointed out, was fiscal year 14.
So just to show you where we stand, and, of course, we'd very much like to answer any questions that you have or observations.
Andrew?
Peter, you kind of summarized it at the end with maybe I'd have to go find it myself, but I just wanted to see, is it possible to break this down a little bit more so we don't take the whole state, maybe we take like the 10 surrounding districts? Just so, I would just like to see that number. Is that possible?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it gives an analysis of all 326 or 327, depending on the year, reporting districts in the state, and you can segregate those by school districts. So what I did with Carver, if there was a list that you wanted to come up with to look at the surrounding towns, I could do a similar analysis for the area.
That would be great, Peter. I would appreciate that.
I think that original document, that original pack that they gave us, where it was broken down page by page, kind of has that list of every district. So you could even, I mean, Wareham, Middleborough, they're all listed in there in that original packet that they gave us,
original
too.
one? All right.
Yeah.
A real quick way to look at it is you can, and we'll definitely prepare something for whoever you want us to look at, but is if you look at the total per pupil expenditure and you sort that one by rank, you can see where Carver stands in the South Shore, where Carver stands compared to the whole state, however you want to do that. The only thing that's kind of off is districts that don't have a high school. It's a different, it's a different thing because high schools cost more per pupil than elementary schools. But both of our schools, well, we have preschool through 5th grade, so we have 7 grade levels at the elementary school and 7 at the middle high school. So we're fairly comparable to middle high schools and elementary schools. But there are districts, for instance, say, well, where I live, Nauset, okay? The elementary schools are town by town, and they have different per pupil costs, and then the region is the whole district. So, but they each report by town, so you have to sort of look at where you're coming from, because, for instance, Wellfleet only has 106 children, so the smaller your school, the higher your per pupil cost, because you have to pay a portion of the superintendent's salary, et cetera. So, but, you know, Andrew, if you make a list of the ones you want us to compare it to, we'll do it.
Thank you. I get your context too, Andrew, because I mean, when you did look at it, I think what Provincetown was up in the highest. And
23.
Yeah, 23,000 per student for all 12 students they possibly have. Okay, so the comparisons aren't equal in what you're saying with that, but I think when you look at the state as a whole, to recognize where we fall on a consistent basis in all of our spending is kind of a telling fact. I mean, the only place where we're really rising is in professional development, which is a good place to be spending your money, truly, when you're looking at improving your staff. So I know what you're saying, but I think as an overall picture, to me, this was very helpful because it really showed where we're placing in a consistent basis with what we're spending. It's not like we're all over the board. We're pretty much within that range in almost everything that we're doing.
We did make a significant drop in pupil services a few years back, which, you know, Karen was able to build some in-district programs.
Bring it back, yeah.
Which was really good, but that's the only one that really took a swing.
Any other questions?
This is a great review, so thank you both. Just as I'm sitting here, I'm reminded of when Mr. Ward ran for office his last time, and I spoke at one of his forums, and I said, under his watch, Carver's lean and mean, which is excellent. It's great. And under your watch, Liz and Peter and the rest of the administration, like the schools are lean and mean, and they get a big bang for their buck. It reminds me of the way Belichick and the Patriots do business. I mean, you know, they get value, and they pay less for it, but yet they have excellent results. Now, we haven't won the Super Bowl, but when you guys tell us about music and culinary and academics, we had all those great kids here before the video camera was on. I mean, I'm so proud to live here. Again, I know that's why you chose to move here and stay here, is because you knew it was an excellent education system for the price you pay in taxes. And so I'm glad I live here still. Glad my daughter still has, 8 years to go, and you never know, Mr. Ward, maybe I'll have some grandkids here someday. But, so again, this is quite impressive budget tonight, and so thank you for all your hard work.
Thank Peter, he really did a lot of work on those graphs, so.
Thank you, Peter. And seeing as we're still talking about you, how about that facilities update?
All right, well, hot off the presses. Today, we had discovered that we have a building automation problem in the Irwin K. Washburn wing. Pod 4 is not communicating with the main controller, so we have to manually turn on the heat every morning, but there will be a tech coming out. For parents at home who may watch this, they're coming out, and they will hopefully get that solved immediately. But right now, we have to manually turn on the heat. Last month, much to our surprise, we found out that one of our pipes that was supplying water to the well pump building, which is a pump house that's located in the woods out behind the practice football field. We saw a big puddle there, discovered that we had a leak. The pipes were original pipes were out there. We excavated the area, found out that the pipes had finally burst after many years. We had to put in some new water piping. 3 feet of pipe were removed and replaced with ductile piping and 2 dresser couplings. Likewise, we've been having problems with the potable water system. Found out that the external ground wire had rotted, and we were able to replace that, which has solved our pump cycling issues. In both of those repairs, it's been 2 weeks since those were completed, and we've, knock on wood, had no problems yet. And Dave just wanted everyone to know that the bid package has gone out on the upcoming septic project, and if interest is a good thing, then we've seen a number of bid spec packages being picked up, which hopefully means that we'll have some competitive bids. The bids are due and will be open on December 1st.
Excellent, thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Peter? Okay, James and Andrew, would you like to comment on the building committee report?
Sure, you wanna go first and I'll do the dates?
I actually had a question about that. I'd like to start. This is the week of the visits. Did you get any visits today? Or?
We didn't have any visits today.
None today?
None today, but we have the week, every day except for Wednesday. Hopefully we'll have some visitors tomorrow. We have a busy day at the elementary school. We've got Veterans Day ceremony, but we'll be ready.
I think there's a communication subcommittee for the building committee, and I think they've really worked hard to try and get out there. And Mr. Neef has been really actively involved in that, and Mr. Ward has been getting out everywhere he possibly can. And I think that committee is working hard to make sure that we're trying to reach everybody we possibly can. There is no focused area that we're looking at. We're trying to get to parents. We're trying to get out to the homes. And I think that's the big thing, is that the committee is reaching out to the community. We're going to you. We're trying to get ourselves out there so that the facts are clear and that people understand really what's going on, because it gets that crucial time where rumors start to spread and people hear certain things and they think that that's what it is. And I think confusion was one of the issues that we faced last time, where there were a lot of gray areas that people weren't sure about. I think this committee is doing a much better job at addressing that. But I also know clearly, considering that there wasn't a single visit on the first day, that we're not doing it as well as we can. I know when we went to our visit at South Meadow Village, there were quite a few residents there that said, I'd love to see what the building looks like, and I'd like to know, because I don't think a lot of people knew. And one of the comments that I made was, when we moved into this town, we did that for that small school environment, and I honestly had no idea the condition of the school. And I think people assume that a lot of young parents really know and understand, but they don't, unless you actually have a child in that building and you've been in that building. You really don't know the true condition of that building. And I would highly recommend to anybody that's listening to take advantage of the opportunity this week and to visit the school and to really see what these children are going in and the environment that they go in daily. We're at a really critical point. The building committee and PMA have done a fantastic job and trying to keep this within all of the scope that we need to budget-wise. Mr. Milanowski has some fantastic explanations, and I think one of the things that's made it really effective, Michael, and you hinted to it earlier, is that a lot of people are asking, well, what about the fire department, and what about the police department? And we're looking at this big funding for the school, but there are so many other things in this town that we have to look at also. And I think hearing the plan that's been established and knowing that that's been in consideration of this committee and what's going on also is really important for people. And I think that that's made a huge impact in people knowing that, well, we have to do this, and there's a plan to take care of the other things in that same process. It's been critical, and it seemed to be one of the facts that go over really well in what we've been doing. I know that PMA is involved in many other things, and I would like to make on behalf of this committee, a really, a special thanks to all those parents and everybody that have been out there getting involved, because one of the things that Chad, the representative from PMA, said was he's doing work in other towns and he can't find people to do what they're doing here. He's like, what some of the committee members and what some of the PAC members are doing is incredible, the amount of time and effort that they're putting into getting out a good, clear, concise message to everybody. And that's definitely a bonus for us within that context.
I'd just like to make a comment about the
Sure.
visits. I mean, things sneak up on people and they may not
Right.
realize that it was available this week. And although the staff has very graciously agreed to be available and give tours all this week, but if you can't make it this week and you want to come next week, if you give my office a call at 6160-866-6160, you can make a specific appointment. I can't ask people to be always available, but if you make a specific appointment, then we can definitely give a tour even for one person.
And the next big forum that we held will also be held in that school. So hopefully that's a night we can get a good turnout. Andrew, you want to cover some of the dates and some of the things we're going to?
Well said earlier, James. The public forum that James was mentioning is the 19th. That would be located in the cafeteria at the Aaron K. Washburn building. What time is that at? 7 p.m. So 7 p.m. And that's just an opportunity to get your questions heard. And if you're looking for, exact information, you can just come in, grab a flyer, and take off if you'd like. But if you'd like to just stay and, really have that opportunity to fully be heard, that's your opportunity. And then I personally think the biggest date is November 20th. November 20th is the last day for Carver residents to register to vote. So if you really want to, truly have your voice heard, that opportunity is done if you are not registered by the 20th. So what are the hours? Mike, you might be able to fill me in on that. What are the hours on the 20th? So if someone's coming in, and what are the hours that it's open? Well, just if you're a parent, you're looking to get to the town clerk's office, what is?
I think on the last day, they're taking it till 8 o'clock.
That's a
Great,
Friday. That's a Friday.
That's
The
awesome.
20th is a Friday.
So you have up until 8 p.m. on the 20th to register, and obviously December 1st is the town meeting, 6:30 at the high school, and then that hopefully that opens up December 12th for the full election vote on the Saturday. What's that?
Yeah, can we just clarify
hold on.
town hall?
Yeah, normally town hall closes at 12 o'clock, but I believe under the state law, your last date of registration, no matter what day it is, they have to stay open at 8. We'll confirm that.
Okay.
Normally it would be 12, but I believe there's a state law that trumps the last date of register has to be open to 8 p.m.
Okay.
And we will have that up on the town website, and I'm sure the superintendent will put that on the school's website too. Just to notify.
Right, we'll clarify that. Right now, it looks like it's 8 p.m., so we're going to clarify that to make sure, but that is November 20th. So, and then again, the election is the 12th on the Saturday. But I think, like James was saying, I know my wife and I have been at soccer and flag football, and it's very interesting, obviously it's great to meet the people and be heard, but it just, their response as far as their questions and that opportunity to just grab a quick folder and take a look, and you're taking down all the information. It's an exciting time, and that time it's all coming due December 12th, so it's an exciting time. So
And we have childcare on the night of the forum.
okay, so the 19th there'll be childcare. So nicely done having childcare. Where will that be located?
It's in the EKW gymnasium, and you don't have to reserve a slot.
Okay, so you can just show up with your child,
Yes.
and they will be taken care of.
The YMCA is helping us.
Probably thinking some dodgeball. There'll be some dodgeball going on at the gym.
Can I just want to add one thing to that, because something was brought up at our last building committee meeting. There were a couple parents that came in there that I hadn't seen that much before, and it was really nice actually to hear some of their conversations and concerns, and some of the biggest thing that they wanted to do was know how to respond to the naysayers and the people that were, and it was great to hear their responses and to hear their questions. And the conversation was really about hoping that on the 19th that if you have questions, that's a great night to come and ask them. But one point that was made that I want to make sure we hit is that December 1st night at the special town meeting. And I think one thing that was pointed out at our meeting that hopefully people can reiterate and let people know is that a lot of people get leery of town meetings because you're going to be there all night long. But this is a special town meeting, and it's a very limited menu. So the time frame isn't going to be that long. It's not going to be a 4-hour meeting. It's something that will be, I can't be concise in the time, but it's definitely not a full agenda, so it's not going to take that long.
Is it possible to have babysitters at the special town meeting, just like the minute before?
We always do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so I think that's an important thing to continue with us as well.
Mm-hmm. I think Mr. Ward had something. Sure.
Mr. Ward?
One other thing, absentee voting. If you can't make the town meeting on the 12th, remember, you can go to the town clerk's office and get an absentee ballot, and you can take those up until the day before the 12th. So on the Friday, the 11th, you can vote absentee and anything prior to that during those 2 weeks.
Can I ask any of the, and thank you for that, Mr. Ward, because that was a big point that we were pointing out also. Are there any school committee members that have any questions at all? Because I think, I know feeling like we've been in the meetings and looking at the development, how the building's been going, and listened to what the staff has been doing, we've gotten a lot of really good information, and I honestly believe this committee has done a really, really good job through the guidance of Mr. Malinowski and Ms. Sorrell in getting a building that is going to meet the educational needs, but also be affordable for us in the future. And I think that it's been done really, really well. There's a lot of little fine-tuning that's left to do, but are there any questions that you guys might have about anything that, considering you're not really able to make a lot lot of those meetings at all?
Oh, I
or-
was there until the midnight meeting.
That was
I'm
a long
good.
one, right?
I was there until midnight.
I don't have any questions because you, like you say, you've been doing a great job, and all the information in the Carver Reporter, on Facebook, I mean, it's unbelievable, all the information that's there. So
Very
even if you're not
transparent.
in the room, I get this great sense of everything you guys have accomplished. And again, so I appreciate it so much. But I think it is good outreach if you have, all the different medium, old-fashioned newspapers, new social networking. I mean, you guys have covered it all, so great job.
I just did want to relay, I do have the email that came from Lynn Doyle to Michael and to the Board of Selectmen. Last day to register to vote for both the special town meeting and the special town election is Friday, November 20th, from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Thank you.
So it is open till, Town Hall is open up till 8 p.m. for that.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Can I just say this before we go to Mr. Ward? Over my lifetime, I have learned, do not wait till the last day. So don't wait till November 20th. Register before that. So then Lynn and her crew won't have much to do that night.
Mr. Ward.
I was thinking, when do you folks meet again? Do you meet before the town meeting and things?
November 30th at 7 p.m.
We have an outreach committee, and we have a presentation that we put together. Would it be good for us to bring that presentation in and maybe downstairs to your meeting so that the public can see that? Or it's another chance to expose the public to what we're trying to do with the school?
That is an excellent question. Let me take it under advisement. Let me look and see what we're doing, because we're having a special meeting on the 30th to resolve some other issues, and I will also look to see what we have. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to family and community engagement standards.
Excuse me, Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to make a quick comment following up on James' question about us having questions. I don't have any questions because, as you well know, I sat on this committee last time, and I understand some things have been run a little bit differently, but I fully understand the process and the time and the commitment and the energy and the numbers, and what I really wanted to just say was thank you to everybody that sits on that committee. To you and James, because like I said, I've been there, to the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Malinowski, Liz. It's daunting work. It's a really tough, time-consuming thing with lots to look up in between meetings. It's not just going to just the meetings, so I just want to extend my thanks and appreciation to everyone who has done all the hard work leading up to this. I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so upcoming events is in your school committee notebook. And this is also be posted under the calendar section and on the school website. It also lists the town meeting and the voting days, as well as all the concerts and holiday events that are coming up all the way through January. So put it on your refrigerator, refer to it, and we're always happy for you to call and see if you need any more information about it. We'll give it to you. So we'll get this done. That's all I have to say about that one. And then,
Okay, recommendations from the superintendent?
yes, so.
Oh, wait, did I skip the professional culture?
No, I don't have anything for that right now.
Okay, so let's go to Recommendations?
So as you know, one of my goals as your superintendent this year was to work with the entire district and bring a technology vision and site-based planning to what we are going to be doing in the next few years, which Scott will have the pleasure of carrying out. But Scott's been part of this, the whole administrative team, and so when trying to put this together to report where we are on this, I ran across this graduation speech from the president of Hampshire College, and it's pretty daunting to think that whether students are in college, high school, or preschool, that the pace of change is so accelerated that 70% of them will end up in jobs that have not yet been invented. I mean, no more fireman, police chief, doctor, lawyer, teacher. There's so many more things. I mean, those will exist, but there's just so many more opportunities for students that we will have to be able to prepare our students to meet. And the other bigger challenge is they have to be able to collaborate with people on many continents. Because if we don't prepare them to work with people across the world, they will not be competitive in their jobs. We all know who, if you have to make a technology call, you're not talking to anyone that lives around here, because it's outsourced to nations who have lower rates of hire, and for our students to be competitive, they're going to have to learn how to collaborate across the world. They're going to need to think and evaluate things and to explore options that we don't even know what they are. So what does that mean for elementary schools and high schools and preschoolers? Is although, you know, we can be very happy that we're in the bottom third, I'm not sure we can take our students where they need to go if we stay in the bottom third of spending in the state. I don't think it's possible. Currently, we don't even offer computer science to our students. And that's a tragedy. I mean, that's why Scott wants another 0.5 of a teacher. We have some computer application and a gaming course, but we're not able to attract a teacher who has those skills because we're only paying them half a teacher's salary. So, in my estimation, this is a huge deficit in your children's education.
I was kind of amazed. I didn't know we only had a 0.5 at the high school. That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's...
Not in a good way.
Not in a good way. So these are what's facing our vision committee. So we came up with our technology vision that you've heard before that is to transform the educational experience through the use of flexible and individualized technology that enhances curriculum and promotes rigorous learning for all students. So the implication for that is that the pre-K through 12 education is experiencing a digital shift. That we will probably always have paper textbooks and paper supplies, but more and more we're going to be relying on digital tools. We asked some children at the high school what they thought that they were going to be doing. Well, they don't want any more 3-ring binders. They want it all on some sort of handheld device. And they don't want to be turning in paper. They want to be transmitting it electronically. They can see their future. And the shift from paper to digital doesn't really mean a lot of savings, unfortunately. Because as you well pointed out, the digital platforms will change constantly.
Tech has issues.
It does. So as a result of this, I want to make it very, very clear that every technology decision becomes an educational decision. There is no such thing as a bricks and mortar of technology. That it is an educational decision based on what the teachers and students and parents and school committee think is best for the students when we're trying to plan ahead for 5 years and we know we don't even know what's going to be available in those 5 years. But I want you to remember that as you go forward, that every single technology decision we make is now an educational decision because we are making this digital shift. So when we talked about this as an alt team this summer, we tried to describe in terms of less and more. And most of you are not as old as I am, because you're not retiring yet. But you do remember your school experience, and it had a lot of this. What we're thinking of now, we're going to have less of it. Whole class lectures, worksheets. You know, we had purple ones. Now they have copies.
Carbon copies.
Carbon copies. Reading textbooks and answering questions at the end of the chapter. Less of that. Activity of the day with a pre-planned outcome. Teachers posing questions with only one right answer. Oversimplification for struggling students. I heard the superintendent of Worcester, she said I would say this even if I weren't moving out of the state. She is moving on. She says, we cannot love students into dumbness. And that we cannot make something so incredibly easy that we have dumbed it down for our most struggling students. We just have to find a different way for them to learn. Instruction without assessing baseline knowledge. You know, why are we teaching all the children the same thing when some of them already know it? Rote memorization of facts and terminology. There's always some things we're gonna have to remember, but most people don't even know their cell phone number because they don't have to dial it. So it is becoming an old skill. So what we need to have more of as we look to the future is in technology-enhanced classrooms, students discussing and researching open-ended questions where there is no one right answer. There's many different answers. Engagement of students as self-directed learners. So they're going to pick a topic and figure out what they want to know to solve a problem. Student-led instruction. You know, it's got a lot of press as the flipped classroom, where students create ways to teach each other rather than the teacher creating all the knowledge to give to them. I think there will be many different ways to do that, but right now that's one of the buzzwords. Multiple sources used to investigate student questions that lead to a deeper understanding of main ideas. Going deeper and further rather than broader and wider. Access to the curriculum through multiple modalities. So what? This person doesn't like to read it even on a digital format, they can listen to it, they can watch it. We still need to teach children to read, but we have to give them other ways to access it. Student presentation in multimedia formats instead of just posters and journals and worksheets. Use of a formative assessment to inform instruction, and that means multiple dipsticks. What did you learn today? What did you learn on Friday? What did you learn on Monday? How can I support you to learn a little bit more every day? Performance-based assessments that acknowledge students' individual strengths and interests. I think we saw some of this on the park with the electronic testing. It was kind of hopeful that the assessment wasn't all rote memorization because there was multiple ways you drag and drop information into answer boxes. So not that the test is the be-all, end-all, but I began to see a glimmer that we were sort of changing that. Collaboration that supports students' voice in learning. And this is an idea that if you're not in education, you sometimes don't really know what I'm talking about. But systems thinking and modeling to give a context for ideas and a content to be learned. So without giving you a biology lecture, the whole idea is that you take input and you put it into a question you're trying to solve and you get multiple different outputs. And then you decide which output you're going to use as an input for the next thing. So you're learning to learn as you go along. And this was the most interesting course I ever took in my whole career, systems thinking, and it was developed by a biologist and then perfected over at MIT. So I think we're going to do a lot more of systems thinking and modeling in education than we have before.
Learn how to learn.
Yes. So this process to help plan for Carver, where we don't even yet know where children are going to go, is daunting, but we read this very basic book called Vision, and I believe all of you got a copy of it.
Excellent.
90 pages, but each one very,
Excellent.
very good. And then we worked with the facilitator, Dr. Lee McCann, to define the vision statement that we would guide where we're going, to create a strategy to address this. And then I brought together a technology vision committee of teachers from every part of both schools, and then they surveyed students at the middle high school to figure out where students thought we might be going. And now we are working on building level teams to build a strategy to address how we make this digital shift and how we support it as a district. And this will happen all up until December. And then we're going to bring building-based technology action plans to the school committee in December. And in January, we will bring these together to be a district-wide. I think we can accurately plan for 3 years and make some stretch goals for 5. But I think anything beyond 3 to 5 would be complete fiction.
Jumping ahead,
Yeah. So I don't think we have a choice. And as it said in Alice in Wonderland, standing still is the fastest way of moving backwards in a rapidly changing world. So I think the school committee, I would like to see you formulate something between December and January, is how you're going to embrace this idea of the digital shift. Maybe you want to have your own supporting vision, but I think it will be important to frame the work, because I love this picture. Let me go to the next page. Because we really are raising global citizens in a rapidly changing world. So I promised you in November I'd tell you where we are, and I'm telling you in November. So, do you have any comments or questions?
Andrew Poe, questions?
Oh, good.
No?
I do. So, I couldn't help but think about most likely to succeed this entire time.
I'm working on showing it here.
Great. I'm so excited. I hope we do.
Yep.
But my question, I guess, is, so I know that we have to shift to the digital, but there's also some other aspects of that.
Project-based learning.
Yeah. So are we looking at those as well?
Well, part of the digital shift is letting students take control of their learning and doing project-based learning versus answering the questions at the end of the chapter.
Right.
It's all part of the same. Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess my other question is, as part of how we move forward with this, are we going to be looking at, I kind of already know the answer, but are we looking ahead to like more technology grants or things we can do to bring technology in through creative means?
I think we're looking at everything.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I figured you were, but, just want to make sure.
Ruby and I heard a speaker on Friday, Young Zhao, who talks about the value of project-based students learning, delving into their own interests. But he was really funny. He said, my oldest son, he got in University of Chicago, top-ranked university. I was so happy. He majors in economics. But after 2 years, he says, Dad, this man is Chinese. He says, too many Asians in economics. He said, well, what are you interested in? Art history. He said, oh, but we live in Oregon. It's a mild climate. Don't let him move into your basement. And then he said, my daughter, she was at the University of Edinburgh. You know what she's majoring in? Philosophy. Oh, no. I can't let them move into my basement. He says, we have to prepare them for the world they're going to live in. He was being flippant, but we do have to find a way. I mean, students do need to study philosophy and art history, but we have to help them find a way in the world to make a living as well, so.
Excellent.
Yeah, at the end, so you said you're interested in the school committee's insight, so
Yeah.
how do you suggest we move forward with that? Should we have a workshop, or?
Well, I think we would look at what the vision committee and the site-based committees put together for a site plan and a district plan, and then have a workshop on how the school committee might support this. What kind of commitments does the school committee want to do this? Because although I'm retiring, I don't think Scott's gonna give this up.
Not a chance.
So, because this is, you know, we went from the industrial age to the 20th century. We didn't really change anything that we do in education. Farming, industrial age. And now, there is no way we can go to this new world and prepare children without figuring out how we're going to make some changes. So I think it would be important for the school committee to figure out how, and to be able, the most important thing is to be able to articulate it. I mean, we have a 10-year plan which counts for no absolute zero growth in Chapter 70. And this is, I mean, 1.3% will never survive. Carver won't survive. The schools will be decimated because the inflation rate's like 3 to 5% every year. So we have to figure out, and grants will only come, cover some of it. You know, we're not, I've worked really hard at grants, but they come and they go. And, you know, as soon as you put something in a grant, you have to guarantee you can fund it forever. So it's kind of hard. But that's really all I have, and then we have a couple field trips.
Well, just to add on, I think the book was excellent, Liz. I've had quite a few people ask where that came from. And I think it is important for us to be involved in that, you know. As you went through this, I'm a teachers tend to be quoted. I liked in your conversation what you're talking about is content is gonna come and go, and Google allows them to get at any content they want. But this is skill-based learning. They learn the skill, they transfer that skill into whatever they do if they learn that skill. And one of the quotes that I have on my door, which has been coming in my head the whole time you've been talking about this, is it's an old proverb, and I'm sure it's from many different cultures, but it says, "Don't limit a child to your understanding because they were born of another time." And we can't predict what they're going to need. They know better than we do what they're going to need to move forward. And I think it's important that this plan is going in the right direction, to listen to them, to be able to hear part of that. And they don't have all the answers, but they've definitely got good questions. And I think it's great that we're moving in that direction and at least formulating a plan that's going to help do that. And I'd love us to be able to be a part of supporting that in any way we can. And I think, Barry, to the context of understanding that a little better, that text that Liz did give is a great resource to sort of get a feel for what's important and which direction to maybe start heading that way too.
Don't get stuck on the infrastructure chapter,
Right.
just skip it altogether. I mean, we've taken care of infrastructure, you just need to worry about the rest of it. Servers and all that kind of stuff.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
James, Barry, Paula, thank you for sharing. So we have a field trip. Would someone like to
Make a motion that we approve the Science Department trip to San Salvador, Bahamas, June of 2016.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Does anybody have a question?
Am I missing it? What grades is this for?
It's high school biology and environmental science.
9 through 12? Thank you.
And they've gone on this before.
Yes.
Yeah, and we've seen nice slideshows.
We have, yeah. Looks like an amazing trip.
And this gives them permission to ask students to participate and to raise funds. But it doesn't, until they get a critical number, it doesn't mean they're going. Yeah. But we have to approve it because it's out of the country.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any more questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion stands. It's approved. All right, the next thing is report from the school committee. Does anybody have anything that they would like to report or share? Ms. Paula?
I'll go.
Absolutely.
So I said my thanks. I just want to reiterate that. I know everybody's working really hard during this budget time and on this new school building, so thank you for that. And just an update on what I mentioned last month as far as my client and their awards for Life Changer of the Year. Anybody that knows a school employee, doesn't have to be just a teacher. It can be a para, a custodian, a bus driver, anyone full-time employed, can be nominated, but they just announced today the launch of the holiday campaign. So that person will get a customized note, personalized from their nominator, and a special travel coffee mug. And then the people who are finalists will also be invited to a very fancy resort in Cabo if they're the finalists for the top 16 awards. So then they get their cash award, which is split between them and the school. And we all know people want some new money in the school. Maybe that's one way somebody could get it. So just wanted to give an update on that.
Barry?
I just have two quick things. We don't have as big an audience as we did at 7. Donna's still here. Thank you. Today's Monday, the 9th, right? So obviously Wednesday is November 11th, so I just want to thank all the veterans that are present and the ones that are not here and the ones that have served our country in the past. So thank you for that, because that gives us the ability to do what we're doing here today. That's number one. So try to at least go to a parade on Wednesday. I think that I don't know if Carver has one, but if not.
They have a little ceremony at Town Hall, and then we'll have a big ceremony at the elementary school.
Oh, that's right. That's tomorrow, Tuesday the 10th.
Yep.
I'm coming to that. And then I know the chairperson mentioned thanking the police about that event that happened. And I don't want to fan the flames, but before I was in that interim period of time when I was not on the school committee, obviously that horrible tragedy in Sandy Hook took place. And then all the town leaders had a meeting to talk about it. And I wasn't involved in politics at the moment. And I wrote down some of my thoughts. And this meeting was January 3rd, 2013. And I wrote down, I still have it in my email for some reason, but I wrote this. And this is just drafted, so it's not good. But I wrote this. I just attended a security meeting held in the gym of the Carver Elementary School. There were hundreds of parents and citizens sitting on the wooden bleachers. Dozens of our town leaders were there to answer our questions relative to the horrific tragedy that occurred in Connecticut in December. People wanted to know what the schools, what the town, what we could do to prevent this unspeakable evil from coming to Carver. I wrote, it has to be addressed, it cannot be ignored, it cannot be swept under the rug. And then I kind of trailed off. And I write that, and I thought, it's never going to happen in Carver, thank God. And then, even though it was a false alarm, it was real. And I won't play the voicemail from my wife, but I got this voicemail from my wife while I was at work, and I'm glad I didn't listen to it when it was happening, but it was not fun, and she was terrified. And so I'm glad we're building a new school, because I know it's going to help prevent anything like that, and even minor nonsense that could happen. So, but that was, January 2013. We're almost 3 years away from that moment, and it takes a long time. That's the way it goes. But it's got to go. It's got to happen. And again, you guys have done a great job tonight communicating the importance of it. But, this is it. It is crunch time. And you guys are kicking butt, so thank you all so much one last time. Have a good night.
Thank you for sharing, Barry. James, anything you'd like to add?
I'll be brief.
Great job with the haunted house at the middle high school that night. I think they did an awesome job. It was fantastic. And do not forget, November 19th, December 1st, and December 12th. Very important dates coming up. We won't meet again for a brief meeting, but we won't meet again until after that. So hopefully we'll have some great news at our next meeting.
Excellent.
You sure you don't want to do the 24th?
I know. It's the 30th. Okay, anybody likes making a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Anybody? Thank you. We're going to motion a second. Any other questions, concerns, statements?
Oh, actually, one more, sorry. We should really make note that the girls' soccer team will be playing on Wednesday at noon at Marshfield High School against Cohasset in the semifinals. So it'd be great to support them. And was there anything more than that? Okay. And then and the other thing would just be congratulations to all the new inductees for November 23rd for our National Honor Society.
Excellent, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.
Got it.